guys, Two Wheel Pursuit here once again. Today, making a video following up from my 5 things I hate about my CBR500, and this is going to be 5 things I like about my CBR500. Starting off with probably the most boring thing I can, the mirrors. I love these mirrors, man. I'm not sure how much money Honda put into developing these mirrors, but another thing I'm not sure of is why so many motorcycle mirrors suck. These are so good. You can see everything. You can see behind you, to the side of you. They're pretty much as good as a truck mirror. I drive a Ram 1500, which has awesome, huge mirrors, and I can see just about everything in these mirrors, I feel, that I can with my truck mirrors. So the mirrors are really, really high quality, especially for such a cheap bike. Second thing I want to go over is the riding stance, the ergonomics of this bike. My God, they are beautiful. Perfect for commuting, perfect for when you want to get a bit low. They really emphasize the flickability of this bike. You can really flick it around real easy. The weight definitely has something to do with that, but the ergonomics here, how you have these sort of raised clip-ons, really, I love that. Thank you, Honda. Beautiful ergonomics of this bike. You get that sport faring look, you know, but you don't have to be way over. So I guess this might be good for someone who has back pain or wrist pain, some sort of arthritis or something, and you still want that sport bike look, which this bike looks awesome. I'll get to that in a second, but the whole ergonomic setup of this bike, really nice. Alright, let's get to number 3. Number 3 kind of ties in with number 2, kind of ties in with ergonomics, but I think the seat on this bike is extremely comfortable. Especially for a sport bike or sport touring seat. Whatever you want to classify this bike as, this seat is extremely comfortable. I've been riding this bike for 3 hours straight, as in I literally did not get off of the bike for 3 hours. And I had no pain at all. It was more in my hands, more in my arms, because I was leaning forward a lot, and that was by my choice. I think this seat is fantastic. You could probably go touring on this bike if you wanted. The only problem there is the power. The power isn't exactly where I would want this bike to be if I was going to tour with it. But the seating position, you're going to have no problem there. Weird kind of side note on that. I watched Chase on Two Wheels review of this bike. He seemed to feel that the seat was horrible. He hated it. And maybe that's something you want to consider if you are actually looking at purchasing this bike. Different seats, or the same seat on different bikes, it's always going to feel different. You're never going to get the same seat on 2 bikes, really, because they're all going to have slightly different stitching. They're going to be slightly tighter, maybe a bit softer. Every seat on every bike is going to be different. What's up, dude? So keep that in mind. It's a pro on my specific bike. One thing I love about this bike, but maybe if I had gone with another CBR500 or the CB500F, it might not be the case. Alright, moving on to number 4, the gear shifting. Whatever kind of technology they've put in to developing the gear shifting on this bike, it feels absolutely superb. I mean, it is crisp when you want it, and it's soft when you want it. You can tell exactly what gear, or when you're clicking into gear. There's no question about it. The clutch feels really good. The clutch has quite a bit of free play in it, as you can see right there. Not a big fan of that, but that's something that's adjustable. It's not a big deal. That's a very minor thing. It doesn't really bother me too much. But the clutch feels really good. The engagement point on the clutch is pretty far out. There's not that much on the clutch, so you can be going through the gears really quick. You can even two-finger it if you want. I usually two-finger it. And on top of that, the gear shifting just feels so good, so crisp. You can really tell what RPM you're in. Downshifting feels good. Every gear on this bike feels good. Obviously, when you start getting into the higher gears, it's a lower CC sort of beginner bike, so you're gonna have some power loss up there in the higher RPMs of the last gear. You're also going to be in the last gear more of the time because it is a lower CC motorcycle. But regardless, gear shifting feels extremely good. I'd say that's one of my favorite things about this bike. I know, like the KTM Duke 390, I'm not a big fan of that. Shifting on that. The Ninja 300, I've heard it's a bit softer. And this is just on the gear shifting on this bike feels so crisp. And I'm gonna keep saying that because it really does feel crisp. But I could probably go on for a long time talking about how much I love the gear shifting on this bike, but let's move on. Number 5. This is optional. Could be looked at as a pro or a con. It's up to you. Number 5 is this bike is actually very rider oriented. And I mean multiple things when I say that. First of all, Honda has always been very... Well, let me back up. Motorcycles today are really implementing more on the technology side. Motorcycles are turning into cars. I'm not sure if you guys saw, Honda actually released in their press conference a motorcycle that was self-balancing. I think BMW is coming out with something similar. That's not really a motorcycle if it's self-balancing. You know, a motorcycle that has, like, it leans for you, it's self-drive. If we're coming out with self-driving motorcycles, what's the point? The whole point of being on a motorcycle is to drive, to ride. So that's my opinion on that. It could be looked at as a pro or a con, but Honda is very focused, it seems like, on a lot of their motorcycles. And it seems like they're one of the last manufacturers to be doing this with their bikes, not putting in too much technology, which I applaud them for, because I see where it helps, especially with ABS. I'm a big fan of ABS. ABS does not affect your riding unless you're trying to do stoppies, but people on this bike probably wouldn't be trying to do stoppies. ABS doesn't really affect your riding as much as having different modes on the bike, all that stuff. This bike is like purebred. It does not have any modes, no sort of slipper clutch, not any kind of rider aids except for ABS. And you could obviously get it without ABS if you wanted for like $300, $500 cheaper. Which is, I'd recommend getting the ABS if it's your first bike, but that's up to you. I really do like the fact that, I mean, the two super sports right now that I'm seeing that have no kind of rider aids, no electronic rider aids, the Honda CBR500R and the Triumph Daytona 675. And I think that really, go ahead, I think that having no rider aids on a bike gives you a better experience. I get where they could come in on a super sport and say, okay, well, this bike has a lot of trouble when you're low in the RPM range. Let's put it in a low mode so people, when they're commuting, they're in the city or whatever, even though that's not all the bike is designed for, they still have an option to do it. But that's one thing that I really like about this bike. It's one of the few bikes out there that you're getting minimal rider aid, minimal assistance. It's just you and the bike. And I really like that. It seems like Kawasaki, Suzuki, Ducati especially, BMW, and BMW is coming out with a new bike, the G310R. I'm not sure if they're putting any rider aids on that, but that's kind of like a beginner bike. I'm seeing more rider aids starting to come into the beginner market, which is my concern. I think ABS is the only thing that you really need as a beginner. I think that besides that, you should learn to ride the bike as the bike is intended. So, to wrap up this review, what do we have? I guess we have a comfortable, reliable, basic bike that looks good. Feels good too. And I would recommend it to anyone looking for their first bike. Alright guys, two-wheel pursuit. I'm gonna go ahead and close it out here. If you guys have any questions for me about the CBR500, go ahead and post them in the comments below. I will be sure to answer them. Until the next video, I will see you guys soon. Take care.